Robert, good morning. How are you?
Good morning, guys. I'm doing great. How about yourselves?
Doing well, thank you.
Interesting. I was looking at some of your tweets, and you're a quarterback, and so you'd think that you'd give love to the quarterbacks. There's some damn good quarterbacks in these Final Four teams, but you pointed out that the teams that won the games this weekend, first of all, only gave up, I think, 12.25 points per game, and they won in the trenches, and we saw that in Cincinnati for sure.
Yeah, 100%, guys. And like Cincinnati's win was so impressive because they were down 3 offensive linemen, right? You know, no Jonah Williams, no Alex Kappa, and of course Lyle Collins is out because he's on IR with an ACL. So for them to go out there and protect Joe Burrow the way that they did was impressive. I had a little fun on Twitter talking about their white jerseys with the snow and then blending in, but at the end of the day, they won on both sides of the line of scrimmage. And I think the point that was being made is that the last 4 quarterbacks are, Patrick Mahomes, Jalen Hurts, Joe Burrow, and Brock Purdy. And Purdy's been playing really, really well as of late down the stretch. But it really comes down to the entire team playing the way that those teams have played, which is why those teams are the best 4 teams in the NFL right now. It's not just about the quarterback. It certainly helps, but it's not like any of these guys went out there and threw for 350 yards and 4 touchdowns. Most of the games were pretty low scoring. The defenses played their tails off, and these guys dominated on both sides of the ball. And, people don't like to give credit where credit's due, but running the football was the key this past weekend in the divisional round, not throwing the football around like it's 7-on-7.
Robert, I can buy into some of that, but I just look at the Joe Burrow draft where the Bengals had the number 1 pick and the then Redskins had the number 2 pick. The Bengals get Joe Burrow, and their future is incredibly bright at this point. 1 pick later than that, Chase Young is selected by Washington, and Washington just seems to be spinning their wheels. They're in this cycle where they win 7 or 8 games, and they can't get out of their own way. So securing that quarterback is super important. And I know that Purdy came out of nowhere as Mr. Irrelevant, and he's got his team 2 wins from the Super Bowl. But I'd be pretty happy if I were the Bengals with my future with Joe Burrow. And along the same lines, even though they lost, I'd be pretty happy if I had Josh Allen leading my team at this point. Or Mahomes, obviously.
Yeah, no question there. No doubt about the quarterback isn't important. It is, you can still say, is the most important position in football to secure. But none of these quarterbacks are going out there historically and winning Super Bowls without top 10 defenses. Only, I think, 8 quarterbacks have ever done it all time. So when you talk about Joe Burrow, yes, having him certainly helps that team. But it wasn't that without Joe Mixon, that Bengals team doesn't win that game the way that they win it against the Bills. They were able to control the time of possession. They were able to control the ball. I pointed out that none of the quarterbacks that won turned the ball over this past weekend. So, yes, having that quarterback is paramount, but unless you build it like the 49ers did, where you got Deebo Samuel, Christian McCaffrey, George Kittle, Brandon Ayuk, and a number 1 defense, you're going to need one of those top 5 quarterbacks to get to this point. But those top 5 quarterbacks alone aren't going to get you to the promised land. And I think that's what the Bills kind of ran into, because they could not run the ball effectively and have balance on offense against the Bengals, and that's ultimately what doomed them. So, yes, you can have Josh Allen, but if you don't have the pieces around Josh Allen to help him stay balanced and not have to be Superman all the time, it's going to be really hard to get to the Super Bowl or the AFC Championship game.
Robert, speaking along those lines, I want to get your take. I know you think Brock Purdy is one of the best stories in the NFL, and I agree with you. And I love watching him. I love rooting for underdogs, so I root for him like crazy. He doesn't have the biggest arm, not the biggest guy. Can kind of understand why he slipped. But I want to know, in your opinion, how does his talent translate? In other words, if he didn't have Christian McCaffrey and Deebo and all these other weapons that he has, would he still be successful in this league? Because it appears to me, even though he doesn't have the biggest arm, he's not the biggest guy, he creates with his legs, he keeps his eyes downfield, he has composure, he obviously can go through his progressions. He does a lot of things well that I think would still potentially translate in the right situation with other teams.
Yeah, I would say Brock Purdy, first and foremost, he does have all those weapons. So it's really hard to kind of try to project and talk about him without the guys that I just mentioned, the Deebos and the Kittles. he has those guys. So he's going through his progressions and he's maximizing the game plan. And I think a reason that he came in, so more advanced than most rookies in this situation is because he played all 4 years and started all 4 years at Iowa. Right? He's played a ton of football. He understands how to maximize a game plan. And I think that's what's allowed him to stay cool, calm, and collective in these moments. He never shies away from it in interviews. He knows that he's in arguably the best situation in all of NFL football right now with the defense that he has and the weapons that he has on the offensive side. All he has to do is facilitate the ball and not turn the ball over. And ultimately, that was the best thing he did against the Cowboys. He did not turn the football over. And we saw Dak Prescott go out there and throw 2 interceptions, and that was the difference in the game, no matter how we want to cut it up and splice it up and talk about it on TV. Brock Purdy's biggest asset against the Cowboys was he didn't turn it over. And if he can do that and facilitate the ball and allow his offensive weapons to make a couple special plays and their defense shows up the way that they have, they can wholeheartedly go out there and make it to the Super Bowl.
Robert, I know this is jumping ahead, but what do you think happens with Purdy and Trey Lance as he recovers from the fractured ankle? This is a 49ers team that parted with a lot of assets to move up and draft Trey Lance. They thought he was the QB of the future, and now Purdy plays so well in relief of Jimmy Garoppolo. What do you think they do there at quarterback heading into 2023?
Well, I'll tell you what, the 49ers probably have had one of the craziest in-season quarterback turnovers that we've seen for a team to make it to the NFC Championship. When Trey Lance was playing, they deemed him the future. He was going to play. He got hurt, and then Jimmy came in. If you guys remember, in the middle of the year, the conversation shifted to, hey, the 49ers are open to bringing back Jimmy Garoppolo as a starting quarterback next year. So Trey Lance still hasn't really gotten an opportunity to prove himself because he hasn't had extended playing time. Jimmy came out, played well enough that, he was playing like a top 5 quarterback also. People won't give him credit for that, but if you go look at the games and watch the tape, he was playing at a high level, and now you got Brock Purdy playing at a high level. So I think the common denominator here is, as we all know in Washington, with Kyle Shanahan, he's one of the best game planners and one of the best football minds I've been around for the quarterback position, and he's got Brock Purdy playing at a high level. So if Brock Purdy – I don't think he has to win this game or go to the Super Bowl for it to be a conversation next year of him being the starter. I think that's already been determined, that him and Trey Lance, right now today, it's an open competition between the two of them. Doesn't matter about the draft position. And I think they should come out and say that whenever the time comes. Now, if he goes and wins the Super Bowl, it's a done deal. He's a starter. There is no open competition. But right now, today, it should be an open competition between Trey Lance and Brock Purdy. I think he's earned it, and I think Trey Lance will be up for the challenge.
What do you make of the Dak criticism? You mentioned the 2 interceptions. They are what they are. I agree with you. It's probably the difference in the game. He's now, I guess, 2-4. I always have a problem sometimes with these playoff things. You base them on 3 or 4 games, and, we make these large generalizations, pretty small sample size. But he hadn't had tremendous success in the playoffs, and some people think you can't win with them, and I just think that's crazy.
Yeah, I think Dak, I had brought this up on Monday Night Countdown that Dak had to make a decision with his play, what track he was going to go on. Is he going to be on the Tony Romo track, where he's a great quarterback, has a great career, could possibly go on, do TV and do an amazing job? Or is he going to be on the Troy Aikman track, where he's a great quarterback, but he's also bringing Super Bowls back to Big D? And right now he's on the Tony Romo track. I was actually at that game against Tampa, watched him go out there and dominate the Tampa Bay Bucks. And in that moment, I thought, man, this could be the year that the Cowboys could get it done, because the way Dak played in that game, they could win any game and beat any team in the NFL. He just didn't have that type of performance this past weekend. And I just think I agree with you that the large generalizations can be a problem, because now players can be stuck in a box by the media, and it puts that pressure on them. Mm-hmm. If Dak's going to go out and bring a Super Bowl to Dallas, they're going to have to get him some more weapons. Obviously, the Amari Cooper trade, in hindsight, was a mistake. They needed someone outside of CeeDee Lamb to give him another weapon, especially when Tony Pollard went down. But he's going to have immense pressure on him with the amount of money that he's making and the fact that he is 2-4 in the playoffs moving forward. He's going to have to really overcome that. And a lot of times we don't see guys overcome that. But I think that in Dallas, that pressure is constantly there, and Dak has the confidence to do it. So I think he eventually does, as long as they give him the weapons to make it happen. The bottom line is they're not a better team than the Dallas Cowboys do, and they have to understand that and go retool and build up for next year.